Well, today on the Practice of the Practice podcast, we have John Bowen. He is a successful entrepreneur and the founder of several multi-million-dollar businesses. He is one of the co-authors of The State of the Entrepreneur, and I'm just so thrilled to have him today on the Practice of the Practice podcast. John, how are you doing today?
Life is very good, Joe, particularly joining you and your listeners.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. You know, we've been doing a scaling series recently with practice owners that are really in that top 1%. And to have someone like you that has looked at the ultra rich, has examined business owners and done it yourself, it's just a thrill to have you on the podcast today.
Well, I've had the opportunity to make pretty much every mistake along the way. So I try to help your listeners find different mistakes. And
well, what's one interesting mistake you've made along the way?
Well, I think it's really the classic starting one is, forgetting we talked before we turn on the recorders of, the challenge of as a professional, you could really get going. And one of the things we want to do is heavy lifting. And we know it's going to take that extra effort. We got to pay our dues and we get going and going. And we never quite visualize the business we're building. And what happens is you build a business that you hate your quality of life. I was a financial advisor. I can still remember a meeting that we had, and it was with several thousand advisors. And I didn't know I actually won the award for being the number one advisor in the country for this large group, a Fortune 50 company. And the morning I had told my wife that I was going to leave the industry. I was teaching grad school at the time. And I said, I might just do that. I just can't stand this, because I was working so many hours, 60 hours looked attractive. That was what I was hoping to cut down to. And unbeknownst to me, they announced me for the award. I walk up and the CEO of the Fortune 50 company shakes my hand and he goes, John, you're the number one guy. Tell everybody in the room, and there's like 3,000 people, how it feels to be the number one guy. And I'm thinking, geez, if I feel this bad being number one, how do you feel? Now, I did have the voice in the back of my mind, my mother telling me, you never say anything unless it's good. And so I just thanked everybody. As I walked off, though, I got really clear that I was never going to let that happen again, and went out and hired coaches. Some of you might know Michael Gerber of E-Myth. Michael lived close to me. I hired Michael at that point to kind of help me build the systems. And lo and behold, 7 years later, we sold that business for $25 million. So, it's kind of, I learned the power of pain and pleasure, and I kind of like the pleasure part.
Well, I think that so many people, I love how you frame that they don't think about the end in mind. And so for counselors, I just want to get people in the door no matter how. And they're pushed up against the wall financially, and they don't take the time to really say, well, what do I want my life to be? And then how do I work a business that supports that life? Versus so many of my consulting clients, they're highly successful, but they're working 60, 70 hours a week. Nobody can do it like me. They're not systematizing anything. But that's not really the best way to run a business.
Well, and it's not true, too. I mean, I don't care how talented you are. There's somebody else as talented or more talented. I went through that period, too. And I think one of the things, that's so great in today's technology and, people like yourself sharing, how do you build a practice is kind of take a step back. And that's what I thought would be, I'd love to walk through with you is the lessons we learned from the State of the Entrepreneur. And my good friends, Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach and Joe Polish of Genius Network they run two big mastermind groups, but I'm members of. I spend $100,000 a year on mastermind groups because I'm just hanging out with fellow entrepreneurs, and the lessons learned, the connections and so on are just so invaluable. But to kind of share some of the research of what we found with the 3,500 other business owners, because it really relates to every walk of business, including professionals.
Yeah, so you wrote this book, The State of the Entrepreneur, and there's 6 key factors of success in there. I would love for you to walk us through those and just to pick your brain around each of those 6.
Well, why don't we start right at the beginning? And
okay.
This is, I had a chance to review some of your work, Joe, and I mean, you know this stuff really well. And what I find so many business owners, what we want to do is we want to race out there and we don't have that vision as we talked about. but we're not even sure what we're delivering. I mean, capitalism works really well. You get paid well for delivering value. So, if you can think through the client experience that you're going to deliver as a professional and have it systemic. And what that means is you can't be all things to everyone. We're tempted when we're getting started, particularly in a business, we don't want to miss any opportunity. But because of that, we set ourselves up for failure, burnout, the whole thing. So if we can be really clear on who we want to serve and what the experience is that we're going to deliver that's going to create tremendous value, it's got to be a group that we can serve profitably so they can pay us for what we're doing, and to do it in a systemic way so that once we get it going, we can scale it up. And so number one is, I call it nailing it. It's delivering a world-class client experience.
Well, and I love that, because so frequently I feel like people have a hard time with saying who's out. They want everybody to be in, but part of it is defining who's out, who are not your people.
Yeah, and it's just, you're going to find as you become more successful, you're going to narrow and focus. And in every study we do of professionals, and I'm in the financial services industry, we do a lot of work not only with financial advisors, some of the top of the world, but also attorneys, accountants, and other professionals. And we're always looking, what does a person that makes $1 million a year net income or more do relative to good, solid, average, in these professions, kind of an average income would be about $250,000 of successful. I'm not saying that's the average across all, but that is kind of considered successful. But, there's a difference between what the $250,000 net income person is doing in $1 million. And that's what we really study, Joe.
Yeah. So first is they nail it. They nail their kind of ideal client, who's in, who's out. What happens after that? What's step two?
So, they got really clear who they're working with. They've got the experience they're going to deliver, and they feel really good, their transfer of value. And then what happens is, we're now ready to market. We're ready to, get the word out. And the challenge is so many people, I could go back to Michael Gerber's E-Myth. It's a great book, and he talks about most of us as business owners are technicians, and most counselors are technicians. They're good at what they do, but they don't take the time of marketing. So what we do is we race out, get a couple of clients, we're serving them. Okay, they're now, they're no longer clients, and all of a sudden we don't have that flow. So one of the things you want to do is set up a steady stream of clients. Now, there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And there's not one right one, but I look at professionals, the number one way is actually introduction by other professionals. So you want to look at who the gatekeepers are, the centers of influence, the movers and shaker in your market that are going to refer you and build relationships. These have to have economic glue. What are we talking about with economic glue? Usually there's three things in professional strategic alliances. Revenue share. A lot of professions, you can't do that. Everybody kind of defaults to that. Usually that doesn't work. In some professions it does. Financial advisors and accountants, about 50% do. Other than that, it doesn't happen. Second is joint business development. One of the things, you're not the only one that needs a steady stream of clients. And by working together, it's amazing, kind of professional, making it a professional network. People want to, in aligned professions, complementary, can be very, very powerful. And then another is curating ideas. So one of the things we do is we do research on accountants and attorneys. We don't do it for them. We do it for financial advisors, because we want the financial advisors to go out and share this research of how, if you're making $250,000, you've got all these people making over $1 million, you want to know what they're doing. Okay, you may not do all of it, but you want to know that. But by sharing that, and the people making over $1 million want to know what the other guys are doing too. So you want to know the best practice. Curating best practice is helping somebody else build their practice. It creates a lot of synergy. In our industry, if we survey financial advisors, or we do, 61% of their five best clients came to us through other relationships. When I survey the affluent, 54% said they found an advisor by either going to an accountant or attorney. So this is really powerful. Second part is we call it a second opinion service. For people that you're working with, clients doing referrals, most of us are uncomfortable asking for referrals. Well, don't ask, offer. And the offer is for people that you're working with, that you're there for the people they care about, the people they love, and that you will offer a free consultation, take a look at where they are, where they want to go. They're working with somebody, whether they're being currently served well, and if not, whether you're the right one, because you only take clients you can make a big impact with. And if they're not with the right one, you're not the right one, you promise to point them in the right direction. In the financial services and the attorney accounting, that explains about 80% of marketing. Now, you can go do Facebook, LinkedIn, all kinds of purchase traffic. We do, probably over 100 webinars a year, but over half our business still comes through those two things. And it does for every professional we work with.
Wow. So really having that second opinion, that's a great way to frame it, I think. And to say, I like how you said, if I'm not the best fit, and I'm paraphrasing, if I'm not the best fit and I don't think I can give you massive success here, I'll help you find someone who will. That seems like a great service to a community, helps you then kind of build that reciprocal relationship with referral sources, and also the clients leave feeling like, well, he doesn't just want me as a counseling client, he actually wants me to experience success, which I imagine then naturally builds word of mouth and all those other things.
Well, and it's actually what you hit on it, Joe. I mean, one of the biggest things that come out of it, everybody wants to appear exclusive. Well, these people know you are. You only work with people you can make a big impact with.
Yeah.
And they oftentimes are some of the best referral sources.
So then you do those first two steps. What's the third key driver of success you found?
So, we've nailed it now. We've got a great experience. We're scaling it up. So we're now getting a steady stream of clients. So, one of the things, once we get that steady stream, all of a sudden the pressure's off a little bit in the sense that we're not, kind of this, start stop all the time. Now we've got a real business. And so then we've got to organize it. We got to, create systems in place so this becomes repeatable. That, and one of the best measures of a business is if you can leave for 90 days and the business is still there, there's not a sheriff's notice type thing that you're being evicted from your office, you've got a good business. If you leave for 90 days and when you come back, it's even better, you have a great business. And this is where putting the systems in place, the team, whether it's internal, external, outsourcing it, what have you, but so that you can scale it up. Because remember, most technicians, like I have a coaching business for financial advisors, and I think I have 11 coaches working with me. They're phenomenally talented. They're good technicians on average. They're not good marketers. Now, they come and they work with me and they make a low six-figure number because they are phenomenal. They're very top. If they created their systems and so on and wanted to do that, they could go and create the marketing that, and they would create more value. They've chose, their quality of life. This is really good. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur counselor, then you want to put the systems in place so that they're repeatable.
I think what's hard for counselors oftentimes is that idea of making it repeatable. They don't even know what they're doing. It's all upstairs in their brain. What do you do to help people, or what would you suggest that people do to make what they're doing that's working repeatable?
So you break it down into modules. So there's the first meeting. I'm going to call it the discovery meeting for most professionals. And that's where you're asking a series of questions. So we're going to take the client experience first and systematize it. You take a look at where you are, where you want to go, and the gaps. Well, there's a series of questions that you should ask. Now, what most of us try to do is look really smart by just a yellow pad of paper, a white pad of paper, and just write down and kind of do it randomly. So one of the things we teach is an interview guide. And there's 7 areas that we're asking on: values, what's most important in our case, what's most important about money to you, but it's a value conversation. What's most important to you about your family? And then the next question is goals. What are you most proud of? Where do you want to go going forward? Relationships, what are the most important relationships? And then as advisors, then we dive into the asset liabilities. But really, there's a start, that emotional connection. Okay, most financial advisors are very left brain logical, and they would normally skip that. By having that there's that emotional connection. We find, when clients are looking to engage you, they're looking for 6 things. They want character, there's integrity implied. There is chemistry, they connect with you. There's, caring or really empathy, that you get them. And then there's competency. Well, competency is they're going to judge you by the quality of the questions you ask. So have an interview guide, put it in writing. And then 5th is cost effectiveness. And really, particularly if you're not going at the, trying to just be at the very low end of the market, people want value. And so it's value versus that cost and the benefit you're going to go. So as you move up market, there's less price pressure, and that's about 10%. And then the big thing is consultative. What they want is a clear and compelling process that you can describe to them, or better yet, show them in a little flow chart of how you're going to get them the results that they want. And that's, so that would be a system. And in our case, we have 5 meetings. There's a letter, there's the agenda, there's the interview guys, there's the work product that comes out that's templated, and so on. And all of a sudden now you can scale up to, very large businesses.
What I like about this is, for one, so many counselors aren't doing this. So it's good because it's new information. But I think that why they don't do it is they feel like it's going to distract or take away from that kind of personalized empathy. Like, I'm this clinician that can help you grow. But what I've found is that when you can systematize things, it's easier to replicate it. It's easier to then kind of make that system go like citywide or nationwide. I think about even like Dr. John Gottman, who, we've had someone from the Gottman Institute here on the podcast, how they've taken all this research on marriage and marriage therapy, and they've created this system for how therapists can get better outcomes doing marriage therapy. And so for the counselors listening that are like, well, I don't want to systematize it. We see this over and over and over in our world of counseling. It's just called best practices. And so, what John's sharing with us is really, how do you create a best practice for what your practice is? I love it.
You hit on it, Joe, too. The key thing is, and when you most counselors are really smart and they want to do a good job for their clients. But the challenge is, if you're making it up each time, you're not going to, we learn each time we do it, and we want the client to get a great outcome no matter what our profession is. Well, by putting the systems in place, all of a sudden now we have a control or a baseline that we can measure the results. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons why, people that have systems just do so much better. I mean, it has to be a good system, but as long as you're doing incremental improvement from that, Japanese call it Kaizen, you're really going to be very successful. And even if you don't want to scale it up, you're building a simple and elegant business, because this is what I do. If, Joe, you're not right for my service, I'm going to point you in a different direction, because this is what I do. I'm not going to try to change my business to address a one-off type thing.
Yeah. Well, I've seen counselors who they were full, they were busy, they had waiting lists, and they start to add clinicians to the practice, and they feel like they're going to lose the heart of it. But then when they start to create a system of what really the heart of that practice is, and maybe that founder, instead of doing the one-on-one counseling, they do a 4-part group series, and that's sort of like an onboarding for all clients. And then they start working with these kind of second level clinicians afterwards, with the goal of then even having that onboarding process eventually be off of their plate. That's where they can slowly remove themselves from the business, where that onboarding of new clients, that then clinical work, and then the ongoing marketing, like they're not touching most of that system. Whereas when it's constantly that clinician, there's just no way to scale that.
Yeah, like I have one of the largest, probably the largest coaching organization for financial services at the high end. And we do for the major banks, private banks, and so on, investment firms. and I don't do any coaching. I don't go to any of the meetings because I've got a great team, but my job is to orchestrate. You just have to decide the scale that you want to do, and that may not be the right scale, and maybe you want to do something bigger. But no matter what size, you got to have systems or you're going to drive yourself crazy, and probably even more important, you're going to drive your teammates crazy, and people won't stay, and you're going to be constantly battling turnover, and that is one of the most stressful things you can have.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there. So what's number 4?
So it's monetize it. So one of the things we do is we, as professionals, so often we don't treat these as business, and if anything, we focus on the top line. When you meet somebody, everybody asks their revenue type thing. Well, there's a difference between revenue and profitability. And it's what you get to put in your pocket. So designing your business on purpose to generate the cash flow that you want to live. I always look at, we're in business not for more business. We're in business to support the quality of life of all stakeholders. So that's not only your clients, but if you have any partners, teammates, your family, that type of thing. And so, and you got to do it for you too. And your enlightened self-interest, a little bit like on the airplane when they announce the oxygen mask. If you're traveling with a child, you got to put it on first. Well, you've got to design your business to take care of you first so you can serve your clients. And the other thing that I think so many people forget, like the moment that I walked up on stage to accept that award to being the top guy, my business wasn't sellable. I couldn't get a dime of business. By then creating the systems with the help of Michael Gerber, I'll give him full credit. He's still a good friend to this day. And that was over, 20 years ago that he helped me with that. And what really, once we put the systems in place, not only did, business become really much more effortless, it started growing. We actually grew 70% a year for 7 years before we sold it. And then, the value of that business, because it was growing both top line and bottom line, and the systems were in place, we sold it for a huge multiplier. And that's where, and then that opened the door for all kinds of new opportunities. So this is the one thing, so often we don't realize the equity we can create in a professional practice. I went out and bought, with the firm that acquired me, I became CEO of the U.S. side, and we went out and bought, I think we probably closed on 12 while I was CEO. But, sports agencies, accounting firms, we bought some other professional type groups to fill in. And you don't realize the value. And, some of the checks were up to about $100 million. So, you can create some real value as professionals.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that we don't even consider is selling our counseling practices. And that's why I often recommend people don't name their practices after themselves. Just very simple, right on the front end. Mm-hmm. It's Joe Sanok Counseling. There's a handful of businesses that have the founders' names as part of it, but for the most part,
you got to find Joe again. Somebody.
Right. I know exactly. And so even looking at people, I frequently will get questions from consulting clients about like, should I buy this practice? This practice is starting to kind of taper down. They're retiring, and when we really assess the value of that company. Yeah, they have a website that's ranking a little bit. They have a couple systems in place, but I look at, well, if you were to spend that amount of money just marketing your own practice, you probably could be where they're at within, a couple months. And so to think through, how do I create a business that's really fairly turnkey that someone else could purchase, adds a whole different level of revenue for you in the future.
Well, and as you get good at it, Joe, what happens is, you start scaling up and you have the success. The big thing you do is then it's hard to do it just through traditional marketing. Yeah. So then you start, which we call organic growth. You start doing alternative growth. And the alternative growth is acquiring, but you're acquiring practices and converting them over to your systems, and you're getting an arbitrage. It's very much a strategic purchase that can be very substantial. And this is why you see, what are oftentimes called roll-ups in the industry. I've been involved in a number of those, and these go every industry, from funeral directors to, attorneys, accountants, family counselors, compliance people. That's what they're doing. So, one, if you don't want to do that big stuff, but ultimately, when we survey business owners and professionals, 87% recognize they're going to sell it sometime. Let's design it, be successful on purpose, design it for sale, even if you never sell it. And if you really are ambitious and you want to build something, a large regional or national, then you have to have that, because it's kind of proof of concept. And then you start acquiring others.
Yeah. So after you start to monetize it, what's step 5?
So then, one of the things that, when we look at business owners, so often they're running so hard and the value of their business is increasing. They're doing everything right, but they're not taking any chips off the table. They're not building their personal wealth. And so, stuff happens. I don't know your audience, so I'll just call it stuff happens.
Stuff happens. Well, I had Christopher Lockhead on here. I don't know if you know Christopher. He was one of the authors of Play Bigger, and right on the front end, I was like, yeah, we have to just have a disclosure. If kids are in the car, some F-bombs are coming your way. I appreciate that. So stuff happens. Yeah.
And so one of the things you want to do is you want to have the personal wherewithal to ride through challenges. And I don't care how successful you are. I mean, we have we counsel, we act as consultants to billionaire families. So, I mean, some very large families. Stuff happens, and having liquidity, building your personal wealth. And one of the things that we want you to do, I mean, this is one of the things we work really hard on, is helping business owners become seriously wealthy. And it's not because of greed. What it is when we survey, 94% want to really take care of the family, the people they love, and 70% want to take care of the causes they care about, the charitable side, and 12% just are going to like Elon Musk, are going to change the world,
send people to Mars, save all of humanity.
So there's and actually I took a 4-day race car driving class with Elon. He was my partner, so I can tell you that he is unbelievably creative, and it was before the major stuff. He had done one big deal. It was even before PayPal. But, there's a real opportunity for all of us in this. And so, how do we do that? Well, we want to look and, if we're getting started, one of the easiest things is not paying ourselves. Well, what we want to do is pay ourselves a reasonable rate. When we're building a business, we want to design that it's really a business, that we're not getting a job. I mean, if you're not paying yourself what you could make somewhere else, you own a job. There's no equity value. And so look at what the market is, and then taking a minimum of 10% out and just putting it aside, really, investing it in the market type thing. I'm a big believer in index type funds. If you have less than 100,000, don't look for an advisor. You won't find one that's good. You've got to do it on your own. As you start building wealth, you can start looking at advisors. Really, at $1 million, it opens it up to advisors. But you want to put those systems in place. And then as you start really making money, you want to start looking at what the super rich have been doing and bringing it down, because there's so many things as business owners that we can do with as we have discretionary cash flow beyond our living, that we can do different structures to really lessen our tax tremendously, our not too silent partner that we have, and allow us to become seriously wealthier quicker, to take care of the people we love and the causes we care about.
Well, I know you said it as a passing comment, but I want to go back to it. To invest in an index fund when you're kind of under that 100,000. That is advice I've heard over and over from people that I trust. And I love that a financial advisor is the person that, and I know that's not as much as what you do now. Just dissect that a little bit for people that don't understand why they should do that versus, go into mutual funds, hire an advisor, all that. Just the quick version of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've written books on this. I taught graduate school at some of the best schools. investment theory, and I've managed billions of dollars. So this is something I feel very
You have a
passionate.
bit of authority
Yeah,
there.
a little bit. Well, and I have even more in the sense that I had the good fortune of starting a mutual fund company where a few of the guys won a Nobel Prize in economics too. I would have never been able to afford them after the fact, and so I've always been affiliated with the University of Chicago, and it's rational economics, modern portfolio theory, and so on. And just real high level. As much as you think you're very smart, any of us. I mean, I was at a time. There was a time where I could push a button and move, $500 million. And when I was CEO, we had 25 billion on there when I merged in groups. And so, I mean, it's a lot of money. Well, there's a lot of people that can move a lot more. And you better believe they're really smart and they're doing everything they can to maximize value. And the same with the stocks. Every CEO is going to work very hard to try to maximize the value, not because he cares about you, Joe, or cares about me, but is an enlightened self-interest. And this is what makes capitalism work. Well, not everybody's going to be successful. And then what happens by owning the whole market, not only domestic, but international, large and small, value and growth, what happens is you don't have what's called specific risks. An individual company going under, we all want to make the bet and buy, the Apple before it was discovered type thing, or, Google or Facebook or any of those. I'm in Silicon Valley, so I'm naming off tech companies. But the reality, the likelihood that you're going to do that is low. So own it all. And you can, at cocktail parties, tell them you're doing it. And by doing that over any 10-year period, you'll outperform 99% of the managers, which is pretty good. I mean, there's a 1% chance you could have done better. And it's because the costs are low and the cost, I mean, we're talking about, it can be as much as 10 times lower cost, both in management fees and tax situation if it's a tax. So
I mean, looking at just like most Vanguard accounts, like a whole market index fund is just like so cheap compared to your typical advisor.
It's basically free.
Right.
I mean, it's
we can do a whole episode on investing when you're under $500,000, I'm sure.
And part of it is to take the responsibility, because what people want to sell you are products that aren't necessarily good, that pay high commissions at the lower level because to spend the time with you. And this is where, unfortunately, as you have more money, you can get access to the top talent. But, you may not have that in the beginning. So just Vanguard's is a great selection. Vanguard or Schwab's, index portfolios or Fidelity's, they're all within a few basis points, hundreds of percent cost differential.
Now, when it comes to, and I know you're not, your whole kind of approach isn't necessarily tax optimization, but for people at our level, my understanding is making sure you're maxing out an HSA, your IRA, all those, working with a good accountant that can say, here's how you, pay the least amount of taxes and optimize it, but do it all legally. Any other kind of quick tips around that?
Well, I'm going to give you the challenge. So, okay. I mean, maybe on our website, you pick up the book. If you're really doing well, pick up the book, Becoming Seriously Wealthy, because we show the research of business owners with over $1 million that we did a study, roughly, it's a couple of different studies, but over 500 business owners. And 85% report that they're unhappy with their advisors. They've outgrown their accountants, their attorneys, their financial advisors, because most advisors are reactive versus proactive. So when you go, Joe, to your accountant, he's going to give you kind of exactly what you said, which was great advice. Let's max. And I'm a big believer, we got this not too silent partner with us, Uncle Sam. And, if you live in a high tax state, I'm in California, we got a pretty big, it's 13.3% at the top end. So all of a sudden, it really making decisions. I mean, it's well over half for high income people. Well, whatever you need to live on, you're going to pay tax on. But after that, there's so many different things you can do beyond just the retirement plan. And it's beyond the scope of what we're doing here. It's in the book, but this is where this is what frustrates most people, is that taxes are fairly optional if you have really good advisors. And I'm not talking about doing anything illegal, but there's so many structural things you can do to lower it and lessen it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like a whole new series that we could dive into at some point. So what's number 6 in regards to key drivers of success?
So, we did keep it, which is the financial side. And then what we do is, it's live it. And this is we're kind of doing it backwards. You and I, because we've been doing this for a while, we went to it right away. It's the vision, is what, really businesses we're creating to take care of the people we love, the causes we care about, maybe make a difference in the world. And it's easy on the hourly basis to lose sight of that. And this is something, every morning. I mean, this is, I like a book, Double Double by Cameron Herold. And first chapter, and you can go to his website, and he calls it Vivid Vision. And it's just, he does a better job of describing it. But you can download his first chapter for free. And he gives some examples of vivid visions. And it's, kind of painting that picture of 3 years out where you want to be. And this is something I look at every day. I start my day looking at. I just remind myself what I'm going to do. And that keeps me, one of the most important things as business owners we can do is say no, that we're not going to do things. You should have a lot more no's than yes. I mean, I have 3 yeses that I do, and the rest of it's no. And that's, allows me to build a really quality business. I'm very focused on what I'm doing. On the other hand, I'm really designed to have a great life. I know for a car, I like cars. So I had a McLaren 570S that was dropped off by one of my clubs for the weekend. I'm going to go play golf later this afternoon. I'm in my global headquarters. I've got about 50 people working with me, but it's my pool house. I have no employees. So I've been very focused on the life that I want, and every part of my business is designed for that. Have I hit perfection? No. Anybody tells you they have, they're lying to you. But I'm working on perfection. I'll never get there, but I'm really clear on the direction. And then, as Joe, you and I were talking about, stuff happens. And it gets you off track. And then, okay, we got to regroup a little bit. You've hopefully surrounded yourself with great, peers. I'm big on mastermind, CEO, peer-to-peer counselors, guys and gals who want to grow their business and do what you want to do. And ideally, you want to be the person the farthest back. So you're going with a lot of guys and gals that are doing really what you want to do.
Well, and you've brought up masterminds a few times. How important is that to the ultra wealthy, to people that are ultra successful, to surround themselves with other people that are heading in that direction?
It's really, well, I'll tell you, my partner, Russ Prince, and I, and Russ writes for Forbes. If you Google Russ Allen Prince, he's written 50 books, and it's all on the very wealthy. And Russ and I our next study that we're coming out first quarter of next year we're calling it the Mastermind Project. What we're surveying over 1,000 business owners that are already very successful. We've already been doing flash surveys, we call them, to test it. But we're finding that there's a high correlation with those people who are in masterminds, who are in peer-to-peer CEO groups that cost over $7,000. There seems to be a price break. Once you get over $7,000, it's good. And it's a self-selecting. Everybody's serious about it. And then, and we're finding if you're in more than one, I'm actually in 4, and I run one. I have, 200 advisors paying $18,000 a year to be in my mastermind group. So, there's a lot of value in this stuff, but you got to make sure the right one. So
did you pick that $7,000 mark because you knew that I charged $600 a month for mine for a year? You just wanted me to feel really good about.
I did. Actually, as I said that, I knew you did some masterminds, but I didn't know the price. But
yeah, like, Joe's is a really good one because he's just over $7,000 a year. But it's broken up.
And the lowest price one I'm in is $12,500. I'm in 2 $25,000 ones as well. There are actually just joining a $50,000 one. I mean, I've seen plenty of 100,000, and I'm not encouraging don't go beyond your means, but at the same time, it's really effective filters. And this is, one of the things, it's a journey. We've all heard this, not a destination. You guys are counselors. You probably have said it more than me. But what happens is hanging out with like-minded people who have sage advice, they've done it, and they have connections that you don't have. We all get beaten up along the way. Having some good friends that can pull you up. I had a great lunch with a peer yesterday who's, probably 10 times more successful than I. He was giving me some advice, and I gave him just a little bit. And he goes, John, I think this is worth a few $1 million to me. So can I buy lunch? And I've invited him, so I paid for it. But, those relationships are, lifelong.
Well, and I really saw the value of that when we did Slowdown School last summer, and it was a high-priced 1-week kind of almost summer camp experience where clinicians flew in, we stayed at this place on the water, went hiking, and then worked on our businesses. But the people that could afford it, they were the right people in the room. And, when you have 15 people that are all around the same level of practice, brainstorming, like, I mean, I worked, but it's like the magic that happened was the conversations at lunch that, oh, we could do this together. And, oh, what if we did this? Or have you heard of this? And to just bring a group of people that are at a similar point together, it's amazing what can happen. And so that's cool.
I might just give one of the guys, Jason Fladlin. He's one of the top people on webinars. And I do 100 a year. I'm pretty good at it too. And Jason, we went out to dinner. We're in Joe Polish's Genius Network Mastermind Group, $25,000. Joe has a $100,000 one. I didn't want to write the check. Jason won. So we were talking about it, and he gave me just a few ideas on how to improve the webinar. And the next webinar I did brought in an extra $100,000 of revenue. It was the best one I've ever done. And it was like, how valuable is that connection type thing? Because I'm going to keep on repeating that every week. Now, right. I don't know if I'll get 100,000 every week, but I would be okay with that type thing.
But already, I mean, to be in a $25,000 mastermind group that then now has a 4-time, ROI from that one conversation, it seems like you're going to get an even larger ROI in that.
Yeah, the big thing, and this is where we've got to have the foundation. We've got to nail the client experience. We've got to be really clear. Don't join a mastermind group unless it's just a starting one, until you get really clear on the client experience and how you're going to bring in the system or bring in the clients, scaling it up. But then if you don't have the systems, that's a good time to start joining because other people have those systems, and why go and reinvent everything? Repurpose their stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did this pre and post survey of people that came to Slowdown School last summer, and was like, what was life like for you before you came to Slowdown School? And the most common word, if you did like a word cloud of everybody, was frantic. No, it was hectic. That was the word, hectic. And seeing just that people's time didn't change, but their focus changed, was just such a cool shift to see in that 1 week. So John, if you were to just kind of summarize, can you summarize your 6 points just so that we can have them all at once? And then I want to hear what you would say if every private practice owner in the world were listening right now, what you would want them to know. Like, take us through those 6 points again so that we have a kind of big snapshot. And then I want to hear what every practice owner should know.
So, the key is we want to build a simple and elegant business, and, just starting with that. And so, again, number one is nailing it, delivering a world-class client experience, whatever it is that you do. Second, scaling it up, creating a steady stream of clients. 3 is organize it, putting the systems in place to ensure that client experience is great each time and that new clients are coming in on a regular basis. Monetize it. Don't get fooled by top line. The only thing that counts is net income and growth in creating value. You don't want to own a job. You want to own a business. So we want to make that work. And then, create it, build that personal wealth. Become seriously wealthy. You owe it to yourself and your family to do it so you can take care of the people you love and the causes you care about. And then, probably most important to me is have a great life. Design it on purpose. Create the vivid vision. So what I would suggest to everyone is take a clean sheet of paper, forget the current business you have, and really walk through, if you were to do it all over again, how would you do it? And then do that. you might have that's old co. Now we're going to go to new co. How can we bridge that? And, work with people like yourself, Joe, to help bridge that.
Oh, such amazing information. John, if people want to get your The State of the Entrepreneur book, what's the best way for them to get that? And if they want to connect with your work more, how can they connect with you?
So if they go to aesnation.com and they're, I don't know how quick you're going to post this, Joe, but next week it'll be available for free and all new website. I'll have a lot of the research of what we're doing with business owners and so on. There'll be some books that you can buy. And I also do a podcast. I think there's probably a couple hundred on there as well, interviewing a lot of the people that are doing the things that we're talking about here too. Very few in your specific industry, but all in scaling up businesses. And AES stands for Accelerating Entrepreneurial Success.
Oh, so I'm so thrilled that you're giving it away for free to the audience. I'll make sure that this podcast goes live after that is free and up. So aesnation.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. John, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Joe, thank you, and wish you the best of success and continuing to help your fellow counselors doing exceptionally well.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.